suggestions.
What a good way to intro.
We're all about those smooth introductions. All right, everybody, thanks for showing up for the Philosophy Club. Happy to have you all here as usual. A couple of announcements up top. First of all, again, I'm Professor Manzi, Faculty Advisor, Philosophy Club. We've got a really, I think, scintillating topic today. But before I get into that, just some general announcements. So the Dallas College Philosophy.
Manzi, you cut out. It's just me.
No, I think someone mute everyone, or for some reason, but everyone is muted right now.
Okay, I was wondering if it's me. I can't hear anything. But
No,
Manzi,
he's muted, but I don't know if it's like someone muted us or I don't know. But right now, Manzi can, yeah. Now I guess we should hear you.
I will not be silenced. Okay. So first things first, everybody. And again, we're really happy to announce the and we've been making this announcement for the last few weeks, but it's getting closer and closer, and more of the details are falling into place. So the Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference is happening Tuesday, November 23rd. It's going to be again the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. It's the call for submissions has gone out. It's been delivered to all the philosophy faculty surrounding the Dallas College area, so all 7 campuses, as well as about 15 of the 4-year colleges that are around the local DFW area. So we're very much looking forward to it. If you are interested in applying and hopefully presenting, if you get selected, again, it will be a very, I feel, rewarding experience. And even if you don't really feel like presenting, but you want to check it out, you're more than welcome to come. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. right here on the Teams page. So feel free to drop by and maneuver from room to room to see who's presenting on what. We are accepting of all different forms of presentation. It could be an essay you've already written or a PowerPoint presentation, or it could be something more creative, more artistic. All of those kinds of presentations are welcome. If you're taking my class right now, you could find the call for submissions in our eCampus. Right now, eCampus is down, or it was for me 10 minutes before this meeting started. Don't know what the problem is, but once it gets fixed, feel free to go in there. It'll be under the extra credit opportunities, which should tell you a little something if you end up presenting. Okay, having said that, we have another event happening tomorrow. Tomorrow is the second installment in the Philosophy and Film series. It is a documentary film called Write Down, I Am an Arab. It deals with topics of political identity, especially how, in this case, a particular poet, again, an artist of sorts, is navigating such things. So here's the promotional flyer. It's a collaboration with the Language Center at Richland campus and the International Film Series. So again, it is an international film, so it will not be in English, but there will be subtitles. So again, this is coming on the heels of today's topic, which is political identity. Now, political identity is of a piece with the last couple of weeks worth of topics, I would say. So let me say a little bit more about this topic. Now, political identity is, okay, I guess we can argue this, but we'll throw it out there. Is political identity, or how does political identity tie into your overall personal identity? So we talked a lot last time about personal identity, about how it forms. And so if you'll recall towards the end, this was kind of an offshoot of that. So sometimes people's political identities change, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we're heavily influenced by those who raise us, other times we're not. So all of these things come into play. And instead of just talking about personal identity in general, we thought, well, let's try to segment one aspect of our personal identity, especially one that seems rather timely, and perhaps one that seems like something that we choose, something that we decide. So I'd like to get into that. I'm not particularly concerned with, arguing one particular political position over another. We want to get more meta than that. This is not the debate club, it's the philosophy club. So we want to look at the deeper question of what is it to identify politically? How are we exhibiting human qualities when we decide upon these things? That's what I'm curious about. And I'd like to hear y'all's, again, thoughts on that. And even if you never really thought about it before, even better. What a great opportunity to do so. So again, to recap, we have the film series tomorrow. We're going to open up the Teams page at 4 p.m. We're going to start screening at 4:30 p.m. It's about 73 minutes to film. So after the film concludes, we'll have, I don't know, 30, 45-minute discussion on it. I think it's going to be a really fantastic one. I'm excited for the film. And then, of course, there's the contest. So I guess I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. All right, so I see that Rody already knows the rules, but for those who are new, this is how we roll. Trumpa. So normally, if you want to participate in this conversation, you have to write a exclamation mark on the chat. I hope you all have access to it. If not, please let me know. The way that you can let me know is through a mic. Otherwise, you are only gonna be a participant, because if you cannot speak and you cannot chat, I can't know. But maybe you can, if you're able to like reach out to me anyway, or maybe you can send an email to the Philosophy Club email, and I can maybe happen to read it. I can fix that for you very soon. The idea here is that you can participate. All right. With that being said, since Rody already has something to say, I will then give my floor to Rody, and I will put something here myself. Boop.
Let's see. Come on, do. Okay, can everyone hear me?
No.
Okay,
Go
can
ahead. Go
everyone
ahead.
can
Yes,
everyone hear me
yeah,
now? Yes.
Everybody can
Okay.
hear you.
yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So, I had typed up an essay for a previous psychology class that I took, and I submitted it to Professor Manzi for him to take a look at. But in essence of my essay, um, uh, you are, so I am actually a Dallas County election judge. And I'm also a Dallas County registered volunteer deputy registrar. So, um, in my essay, I I talk about the the political, the biological, and social dimensions on elections as an election judge for the primaries. And so I also so during the elections during elections, it was actually quite interesting. I had learned that that race in itself does not mutually identify what somebody's political party would be. So, as an example, there was an African American gentleman who had who had told me that he was Republican, and that actually was really interesting to me, and that opened me up to a lot of a lot of my own biases, and I think that's one of the things that that we as 21st century voters need to remember is that race and politics aren't mutually connected. There could be differences, and and then it reminded me of the whole reason why I became an election judge in the first place was is to to assist in the democratic process in my own way. And I think I'm actually the one of the youngest election judges in Dallas County, if not the youngest. And 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 in my essay, I had reflected over um reflected over how my political and racial identities influenced my own reasoning to become an election judge and some of the biases that I had to unlearn as an election judge. So it was, I mean, being an election judge is stressful, but it's definitely worth it if you have the the patience in order to deal with the system. And and coming from a philosophical standpoint, when in terms of myself, when somebody when people even in my own family would tell me that I'm this or I'm that, I'm not both, that sort of like goes into the whole point of, well, who am I, and what is my purpose? So that's pretty much all I got to say for right now.
I understand. It is a very interesting thought that you have there, that maybe the race is not a saying of what your political party could be. But let's consider now, what about the environment you grew up with? But it seems like those who are growing up in the cities tend to be more liberal than those who are maybe like in the rural areas. Maybe like, at least this is what I saw. I don't know if it is completely true, but it seems like there is a connection of those in the city. They tend to have more communication with different cultures and different experiences. They tend to be more openness to new experiences, which could transform then into like a more uh, likeliness for them to be more lenient to like a liberal party. But if it is true, let's say, like, how much of an impact could that have? Let's say that this same city boy can have maybe like a very Republican, conservative, sorry, um, family. So what will prevail? Like the conservative side of your family, or the rest of the environment that you are exposed to? So I guess, like, which environment in this case, your family or outside your family, could have more of a higher impact on how you identify yourself, politically speaking. Um, so yes, that's one of my thoughts out there.
I think that's interesting that you point that out, though, because it's not necessarily, I don't feel like it's ever necessarily one thing. It's not race. It's not necessarily even all the way environment. It's just that humans are complex beings. Essentially, there's many things that go into your, not only your personal identity, but your political identity. I even read something upon how genetics can affect your political identity, and you might even be more prone to going liberal or conservative based on certain genetics that you may have. So I don't think it's really one or the other, or one specific thing, but rather it's just your genes interacting with your environment, and then obviously nature versus nurture, and then that's how you grow your outlook on life, and that's how you see the world through different lenses, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I shall concede. Manzi, it is your turn if you
Yeah.
are ready.
I mean, if you're ready, of course.
Manzi, you're muted. You're muted, sir.
There we are. Okay, so yes, I was born ready. Thank you. I like what everybody's saying. And just to provide, again, additional context, the kind of question we were having last time with personal identity was, on the one hand, I guess we could boil it down to sort of nature versus nurture kind of thing, where it's, are you sort of inclined to become a certain person individually based upon something like nature or nurture, or more than that? And part of our conversation kind of branched off into the freedom you have to decide for yourself who you are, as well as how long you want to remain that person. And this is kind of how we branched off into political identity. It's like, well, a political identity seems like something that clearly you choose. First of all, you can't vote until you're an adult, and primarily because, no pun intended, when you're an adult, you have, your rational capacities. So you're able to make a rational decision. You're not simply, how to put this, pantomiming what it is that you're told to affiliate with or support. You make your own decision. Now, that I think is a question. How free are we to decide for ourselves, or how susceptible are we to things like influences, both cultural, familial, or social, in terms of the media? Look, I'll be honest with you. I'll recount a quick sort of story. I remember when I was a grad student, and I took a class with a guy who, rest in peace, Professor Cameron. He was teaching the class that I ended up specializing in, and he said and this is his example, he's from Canada originally. And he said, listen, he focused on political philosophy, and he said, I studied this stuff so carefully. I tried to be as informed as I can about things. And he said, I concluded very much on my own terms that, and this is his example, that he says that I want to support the Democratic Party and that's it. And he's like, but it is also interesting that both of my older brothers are Democrats, and my father's a Democrat, and my uncles are Democrats. He's like, I feel like I made this decision myself, but I can't help but also acknowledge maybe something was influencing me. Now you juxtapose that with something like the Keatons. That's an old 80s sitcom. But yeah, so that's what I'm wondering here is this perception of feeling like we choose something, but also having to acknowledge, well, maybe it's not necessarily such a radical choice. Maybe there's some deeper motivations that are shaping my perception, this kind of thing. Thanks. So what are your thoughts? Excellent.
I mean, to that, I was just gonna bring it to that actually, because here in the US, people don't tend to look outside anything outside of Democrat or Republican, but when it comes to their political identity, they don't even go into the depth of the fact that it's just not limited to these two political parties who represent a specific ideology. People don't tend to go into what their own political standing is. Sure, they might agree with a lot of stuff that the Democrats say or Republicans say or third party claims. But when it comes to finding themselves, people tend to either shy away or be hesitant towards it. Like there's, as we already discussed, about how many factors there are in determining with which political party they want to vote for. Since we're in the US, we're just going to take Republican or Democrat in this case. People don't tend to vote for either based on their religion, race, social background, class, or any other identifying factors of their position in society. But if you look at the greater demographic of it, usually rich white Americans tend to vote for, rich white educated Americans tend to vote for or lean towards the ideologies that resemble those of a Democratic Party. But if you look at the voter demographic of the Republican Party, people who vote for Republicans generally lean towards the Second Amendment and having the exercising the right to carry firearms. They tend to be slightly less educated. They tend to be more skilled workers as compared to office workers in the Democrats. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Even just now, since I've been here since 2016 and until now, so I've seen 2 elections so far between Hillary and Trump and Biden. And from these two, it only comes to mind that, wow, people here have one of those horse visors that limit the horse's vision and keep it from distracting. But if you look at any other country, they have more than 2 parties running. Like in Pakistan, there's a buttload of parties that represent different ideologies, different classes, social classes. They have a lot of stuff there. Does that mean people here don't necessarily have their freedom when it comes to choosing? Because if you have to pick one or the other, in my opinion, that does not represent freedom in its true essence, which comes back to your own political ideology, whether you look at it critically or you look at it that, oh, my mom and dad do this, I agree with this, so I'm gonna do this. I don't know who's after me. I don't see anyone in the chat.
I think it's Ferdinando. I'm waiting patiently, trying not to interrupt.
You're waiting. Go ahead first. It's okay. Go ahead first.
You've
Don't
achieved
worry.
new levels
I
of
appreciate you.
patience, Orlando.
I
So you
concede.
guys kind of went you guys went into like a lot that I kind of agreed with and kind of wanted to touch on too. I'm trying to remember what exactly because you guys went on about a lot of stuff, but I liked what you said, Manzi, about kind of how some things are deterministic in a sense in terms of our political party. I mean, imagine being like an urban youth, born into a world where essentially you're looked down upon, people speak badly of you on the news, there's a bad image painted about you automatically because of the place that you were grown into, because of the lifestyle you decided to take. And so when that sort of is deterministic or it's automatic in a sense, you're going to be prone to going to a party that's democratic and that likes to play political identities and likes to say, oh, well, we're for the urban community, we're for bettering their environment. And then the other party saying, oh, well, no, it's based on their individual choices, so it's their fault. You're going to be more prone to essentially going to one party automatically. It's a deterministic kind of fate. But at the same time, it's kind of like what Yusha said. It's kind of like cheap. It's like this two-party system is really cheap. It's like it's given to you. You don't really choose it. It's like either if you want to better your life, you have to choose this one. If you don't, well, then choose that one. And essentially, that's the way it's framed. It's framed like that in the media. It's framed like that by the actual politicians themselves. And so it's a very divided kind of way to look at things. Because when you really think about politics in general, people don't really actually do their research. They don't understand the complexities of these political ideas and the long-term consequences, short-term consequences, all the intricacies of it. How many people know about, actual progressivism, actual socialism, actual capitalism, actual libertarianism? How much of that do they actually understand? I would say a lot of people don't. And so, but yet they're so passionate about these things. And you have this
Shots.
cheap system that just essentially just gives you this and gives you that and like a ham sandwich. And here you go. You take it, well, take it or leave it. I don't care. And essentially that's kind of what it gives you. And if you decide not to choose it, then you're just there in this ecosystem where essentially you have no choice. You could call them an illusion
Yeah.
of freedom. You could call it whatever you want to call it, but it's a lot of different things. But one thing I was a little bit more interested in when I was talking about the topic is how political systems can breed or produce certain kinds of people. I can kind of make an argument to say that maybe a capitalistic system kind of breeds maybe sort of egocentrical, arrogant people. In a sense, not necessarily that it always does, because it creates a basis of I have to make the most capital for myself and I have to essentially compete with others, versus a social system that's ideal, where it's more communitarian, where essentially you're more focused to looking towards other people. To give an example of this, you have a country like Russia, where essentially their system is a dictatorship. Essentially, the people who are at the lower totem pole, they essentially have to kind of struggle and they have to make it out. And so essentially they grow this sort of very small familiar circle. But I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's cool. But I actually want to add something on what you're saying. Um, so far, I don't know exactly what does that mean for our societies. But for example, my country, I'm from Venezuela. If you don't know, I'm from Venezuela. We used to have different politic parties, not just two. Um, so they were like the yellow, they were like green, red, blue. There were a lot, and people were more like kind of like they still follow the party more than the actual like idea. It was kind of like if your family was a certain color, you kind of like try to follow that certain color. But what did happen is like all those colors start to merge until like less than 20 years ago. Now they also have what it is, the red and blue. And it seems like it's a pattern that keeps growing up that every time that like the political system in different countries start to like simplifying, which I don't know if it is good or not. Um, but it does leave a lot to say to like the actual propositions because it seems like we're having less proposition, which is also kind of like creating a different um, idea of what politics should do. And I don't know if it is like a result of how we are being, I don't know if it is educated, but at the very least, maybe this whole premise of trying to have things easier as an information wise is kind of like pushing toward either red or blue in this case. I don't know. I would like to consider something in that regard. In terms of comments, I have Rodi Etienne is saying that he's in his lifespan growth and development courses. One theory that he likes to to look into it is Bioecological Approach by Yuri Bronfenbrenner. I probably butchered that last name. Now Jennifer, hello. She's saying that people get bullied when they say they're voting for third parties. I'm assuming that's kind of like Kanye West, third party. Oh, Rodi Etienne, I think you want to speak, plus you also did a comment. So do you want to say your comment?
Hold on. So yes, so which Ferdinando, you sort of answered, but I just wanted to hear from all the international students, um, in terms from your home country versus in the U.S. Um, are excuse me, um, what is your political system like, and how is it different? Sorry, my four-legged children are barking. And how is it different from U.S. politics? And the reason why I asked that is that in my I know someone just dropped off a package. And the reason why I asked this is that how how does your identity from your home country influence your political perspective on how it is with the U.S. bipartisan? And I would my question sort of came up from what Yusha was talking about, and then also with Ferdinand.
Yes. Well, you didn't read the question, so I will. You were saying I have a question for students. Well, you actually briefed it, so it's fine. But you had like twice the. Okay, I'm guessing that you were trying to speak twice. Yeah, she was saying in my country, politics is taken as a science, as a scientist. I'm guessing like science that is not understood by normal people. Normal people has no tools to anticipate the political activities. I would like to, if you can further in that comment, that would be amazing. And that would really create a great insight of this conversation. But next in line is Mansi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm very curious. I'd love to hear an elaboration on that comment. I almost don't want to move on, but nonetheless, yeah. Again, the point I wanted to raise, or kind of re-raise. Well, I'll phrase it in the form of a question, and you guys are already getting at it. But it's like, where do you place your political identity in terms of values? Which is to say, when you look at your political affiliation, do you feel like you value it a lot because it's a key part of your personal identity? Or do you maybe think to yourself, well, a political identity is something that's been kind of foisted upon me, and I have to choose this, so I'll affiliate, but I don't really value it. I think the very fact that you can have a variety of people who evaluate their political affiliations differently in a single country or a single community speaks volumes to I guess what it is as a phenomenon. Now, what's interesting is you're going to have different approaches to political identity in different places. Going back to that comment that was being made a moment ago, I think that's kind of really what's at the heart of this is you have to choose to what extent your political affiliation matters to you. Not just you have to choose one, you have to choose why you should care about it, how deeply you should care about it. And therein lies the personal identity formation. Therein lies, you have to say to yourself, I want to be politically minded. Or you say, I don't want to care about politics. I want to care about, my, other things, whatever they may be. I think in making that existential choice, we're kind of getting at the heart of what this topic is, as I understand it. It's your relationship to your political identity, more so than what your political identity happens to be.
Yeah, I do want to open something up for the thought as well before Rabido goes next, because we keep telling like whether like where do you land into the political spectrum, but also I would like to consider like the level of engagement or involvement that you could show toward the political issues, because there are some people that they just don't care at all. why does that happen? Like maybe they come from a very like political oriented family, but they decide not to take action whatsoever in it. Well, there are other people who live for politics, even though they don't run for any political um, like activity. So like why how
Somebody keeps muting us.
not me? But I mean they haven't met me yet. But Rabbit is next. So there you go.
Oh,
I think I
thank
hear
you.
something.
Thank you. So I'm still thinking about what Professor Manzi was talking about, my relationship or our relationship to politics and why we should care about having a political belief. Why is it important to me? Still thinking about that. But what I wanted to say is I am Zimbabwean, and I used to think that American politics is very different from Zimbabwean politics, as an example. And this is going back to do we really know why we believe what we believe? Do we really know what it is? So we have a multi-party system in Zimbabwe, but there are only two parties that run year after year. I mean, that get any consideration. So we can have 30, right? But then people only vote for two. So we have people who will get like, I don't know, 0.5% of the vote and the sort, but then it's two predominant parties. And I thought that in the US, the conversation is broader. But what I've found from my own observation is that the two parties have talking points, and everybody says the same talking points over and over again. So from the outside looking in, I keep thinking, surely not everyone believes these three talking points on the left and these three talking points on the right. Is that all we talk about? Is that the entire discourse? So it also makes me wonder, I mean, how much do people really think about being liberal or conservative? What does that really mean? What are we saying exactly? So yeah, I just wanted to, put that out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I think I think whatever the talking points happen to be are very indicative of the values that political candidates assume that people have. And they probably assume that people have it because people need to value certain things, like, wage or taxes and stuff like that. If you're a citizen in a particular place, then there are some parts of society that you have no choice but to reckon with, whether you want to or not. And so I think those talking points tend to kind of be a derivative of those things. But of course, that begs the question, well, why do we need to reckon with these certain political aspects over and over again? Is that by design, or is it out of strict necessity? Yeah, I think that's a great question. Great points. And yeah, and just for the record, there are more than two parties in America. Um, Whether or not how you feel, but there are multiple parties. What did Kanye run on? The birthday party? Is that what he said?
I guess.
So it is interesting that we have room for alternative approaches, at least ostensibly, but obviously those parties have a hard time gaining any real traction. And as people were saying, that limits our freedom, or limits our scope in terms of how we are able to identify politically. It's like multiple choice as opposed to free answer.
Right.
Yeah. I also like something that you bring up, Raviro, which is like what exactly does it mean to be either liberal or conservative? Because I think that that's actually a question that most people don't actually ask themselves. They just kind of like pick a side and I'm this, but they don't actually wonder like what does that mean for you. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes I even see that some people pick something because it seems like it is the most popular party in the moment, and they maybe are voting against something that can go against their own person. So I think it is a very good question. Also, Duala, I'm not sure if I pronounced it wrongly, is saying, would this also be viewed as a survival of the fittest theory by Darwin? That's a question. So now we have Jennifer who says, what I meant is that as soon as I say I'm voting for a party that isn't either Republican or Democrat, I am immediately inundated with people or on both sides trying to sway me to their position because a vote that isn't for their guy is a vote for the other as well, for the other one. I understand, which is is an interesting perspective, since they maybe see like maybe your vote is not gonna add to the winning side. They want to like skew you into like having their own ideas, which I still don't understand. Maybe it's because of our nature of trying to have easy answers. We try to focus in one or the other position. I would like to see more like ponderate parties than just two. But Yusha is the next one with the floor.
Well,
So
wait.
I would think, oh, sorry.
Let me circle. I want to respond to that survival of the fittest question. I think it's a good question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I think what the question suggests is, kind of like a might makes right mentality, perhaps. And again, please correct me if I'm misinterpreting the motivation behind the question, but it seems like what you're really getting at is, well, if the people in power can kind of make the rules when it comes to, well, we'll just say make the rules, then perhaps that means that in making the rules, they make the freedom. And so that might be a way to sort of consider, again, this idea of the survival of the fittest. It's like those who are fit enough, I suppose, to be able to convince those that certain ideas of freedom are aligned with their own personal values. That's how they survive, at least in positions of power. I think that's an interesting approach to it. Yeah, I just want to make sure we kind of remarked on that question a little bit more. That's all.
Yes, it's a very good point. Go ahead, Yusha.
That is actually an excellent point. I was coming back to that. But see, this discussion has popped a question in my head that at this point we know what the problem is, or at least how to identify the problem. But now in this most recent election, did we vote for the idea that we support the party for, or did we vote for the person? So this is where, in my opinion, the line has become very smudged and very vague in its ideology. Because if you look at it, I've had a couple of interviews with some friends and neighbors, but from those, I understood that especially in more recent elections, people tend to vote for the person and not the idea, and they even tend to forget that what the party stands for or what the candidate is running for. So the best I can think of is both my neighbors, left and right. One of them is a hardcore Republican, and the other is a hardcore Democrat. And they both hate each other to death. They don't even know each other's names, but this is how it is. And when I see this amongst other people, it just brings me to a conclusion that, okay, people take their political ideology as their personality without giving into account that, hey, they might be Republican, but not all Republicans are bad. Just like a Muslim, but not all Muslims are bad. Not all of us want to cause terrorism and stuff like that. But this is this is just how the society views its own political opinions. So coming back to the survival of the fittest, I mean, sure, you can say it goes hand in hand, because if for example, if I live in a Republican dominant county, so I would not want to hang Biden Harris banner on my window. Of course not. So in that retrospect, this has become a survival of the fittest, especially when it comes to these kind of redistricting and putting more people of the same ideology in a very small area, which we refer to as gerrymandering. So this was kind of the topics that I wanted to bring up for today, and especially with the direction that today's meeting is going in, I think it goes hand in hand beautifully.
Yes, I would like to address a couple of points that you mentioned. Um, well, first, just for a point of clarification, maybe Rody can help in here. I think the Rody Mandarin, the Mandarin thing is just kind of like how politicians label where the like the school districts are going to be like landing.
Yes.
So they kind of like district, like they try to skew it more into like the votes are going to be more for them than for others.
Yes.
Um,
Gerrymandering is the redistricting. They basically design entire districts to where a certain party can get amount of votes from, because that's how if you make it into a bigger range, then that's how you win electoral votes, and that's how you win the presidency primarily through electoral votes, of course.
Of course. But I think they just focus on writing it, not because they're sending people there. It's just because of the demographic that is in the district.
Yes.
But I will also argue that maybe they're not really voting for the person itself, but they're voting just for the party, not even for the ideology, not even for the person. I think it's even for the party, because at this point, it seems to me like you can put two monkeys, like just one in one and they're still gonna vote for either way, instead of like having maybe somebody who's none of them, like who has a very articulated ideas. They're not gonna probably listen to it. It seems like that's the case, and it's a exaggerated example, of course, but that seems to me like it's where it's more likely to be happening right now.
I mean, of course,
There's
whichever
also
monkey can solve the puzzle, they can win the presidency.
yes. And now Jennifer, yes, several people voted for Kanye. I think it was like 7,000 people voted for Kanye West.
Around.
And around 6 to 7,000. Let's see. Of course, when it gets good, my internet becomes okay. Yeah, Road is having issues with the internet. Okay, so what Gia is saying that is that they don't have a choice in their country. If it is what I think it is that I'm not sure if you actually vote, but you are really like you never know exactly who the president is, because the one who take the decisions are like those on top, which is kind of like, in my perception, is, I mean, I know it's normal for some people, but like, do you consider like I'm more concerned about what your country consider normal people, and why normal people do not have the tools to be able to choose who's going to be ruling over their life in some sense. Because if you are giving your decision to somebody, like you don't even give them, like it's being taken from you because somebody's saying that you do not have the the tools, like you cannot think properly. I'm guessing that the way that they're seeing it is like, since you are not aware of the different areas or the different circumstances that happen in the country, you cannot properly assess who can be more beneficial for the actual country to run it. But also, I think like in that perception, like you're also limiting the voice that somebody may see as an actual issue in a community, getting into the upper level of the administration. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm very intrigued by how your government sees the whole election thing. Yeah, you can give to a very good paper, at least in this side
I
in your
think
country. It's a normal paper, but yes.
I think she wants to expand on that. She put an exclamation mark. I know Daniel was after
Yes.
me, but since she commented before Daniel, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, for me it's okay if she talks.
I don't know. I'm just going like
Yeah,
this.
I understand that. If you, I understand, but if it's okay with Daniel, I mean,
Daniel seems to be before, but if Daniel wants her to speak before,
It's
then
okay.
it's fine.
She can talk right now. For me, it's no problem.
Yeah,
Okay. Go ahead. The floor is yours. And I don't want to say your name too much because I'm pretty sure I'm butchering it. Even though for me it's just 3 letters. Those 3 letters I'm probably like destroying them. So yes, if you haven't, can you speak like speak, Boop, boop. Or do I have to read your comment? Uh, oh Jesus, we have a lot here. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Just well. Okay. In the meantime, okay. There you go. She's on mute now. So the floor is yours.
Yes, I think political identity is a big topic. In my country, political is very hard for everyone because I think we take political as a science like biology or some that is not a normal knowledge for the normal people. It is need some education or high education can understand the political issues. So if you know, I think so. In my country, the political system is different from other country, but we cannot say which one is good or which one is bad. So different people has different tradition and knowledge and background. They have different history, or some nation has short history and some has a long history. So I think these is factors impact the political system. So I think we should have open our open our mind or our heart. We we cannot to judge each other nation, other country. If the people in other country have happy life, they raise their life graduational or slowly just raise up their life. That is lifestyle they choose. Have they think they have very happy life. That is okay, I think. And not we said or we have or some political issue is very, it is not easy for normal people. That is academic, I think. That the word I think is right for the political, I think. Yeah. So
Okay.
the aim for other country or other nation, just the main aim is raise up their life level is very, it is important for every country, every nation, I think. Yeah.
I like the points that you make. One important factor that I listen from you is that you have a very old tradition, which it could also impact the way that your country see politics. I'm still not sure if you have different parties, and
Uh,
I still, do you have different parties, or just like there's
just
no
the
party?
small party, yes, just the one main party and a small party for just offer some advice for the main party. But yes, it is hard. But for my nation, we have history, we have that uh, culture. So for you understand the freedom or that is rights. But for my nation, freedom all like that, we cannot use it. We cannot use it very how to say it correctly, or uh, we cannot use the freedom to describe our life. So we just focus. For in my country, most of people, majority people, just focus on their life. If the party or some leader gave them high education, high life level, they think that is okay, that is good, that is good party or good. So just keep people's life is very important. That is means to raise your nation the power of com, com, competition, I think, competition. So the power of competition is important. So political is uh, it is very hard, difficult, complex. It is not easy for everyone talk about. You can, you know, most of things on the back, you cannot see it. You cannot understand it. It is not easy. It is very difficult, I think.
Yes, I mean, I'm still. I don't know if if this is the place to ask those questions, but I still don't completely know who your culture define as normal people. Um,
I
but
think
that's. Mhm.
I think what she's saying is that it would be abnormal for somebody to know the intricacies of just like it would be abnormal for anybody here to know the intricacies of astrophysics.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's the idea.
I get that. I get that. But for example, like, could somebody at the young age, even if it comes from a poor family, get educated on politics and be considered somebody who is qualified to run for politics um, positions? Like that's pretty much what I'm saying. Like maybe somebody who is like a very knowledgeable in a specific area, let's say as a doctor or an engineer, could he still be considered a normal person?
Yeah, and I think and I want to push this in kind of another direction. And I still want to
Yeah.
hear, but keep it like this. Why? It goes back to the original question. Why do we care so much about the intricate machinations of the political apparatus? I mean, if would you be considered normal or abnormal to care so much about it? And I think her point is that if you're living a happy life, if you're satisfied with your opportunities and your prospects and your living situation, then why would you care? Maybe you would only care if you weren't satisfied with this, as we've seen here in America. And I think that that gets at the whole question: how much do you value your political identity? It might be tied to what you take your life to be, how you feel. I should say the conditions that characterize your life. If you're
And maybe also,
then you might.
I mean, maybe also the condition that the country is in that moment.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, but sorry I'm taking too long. Daniel, you're next.
Yeah, just wanted to point out how the situation is in my country, Guatemala. Uh, I also had the opportunity a couple of years ago when the elections to one of my friends is studying politics, and he invited me to one of the candidates to their strategy and everything because he was very involved with them. And it was interesting to see how they manage or how they create their strategy. And their main strategy is go to the poorest and give as much as they can. So their two major strategies was give things so they can vote for them, or use the media to create false information to the other candidates. After that meeting, I was surprised. I mean, I knew that was happening, and I knew that we have that type of corruption, but I didn't knew that it was that open or to that extent. And I think that this goes more to how everything is influenced and how people can concede to their party. But I think social media and this news and everything had a lot of impact with it. Yeah, but that I just wanted to say that in my country is completely different, as I'm sure Fernando and the other Latin American countries. But it is important to understand that there is a lot of ignorance in the people too. If people research a little more about the candidate, about the party, there would be a better. I mean, it would be better because the candidates will need to work harder to put higher standards and that. Yeah, I just wanted to show that.
Yeah, well, for that you have to push into education, and sometimes it's not the best for them to push into education. So that also maybe open up like how educated these are like our communities maybe in that regard. And Jennifer has a question, a comment here. She said, "I think it's because the far side of the two major parties basically decides who the candidate for the party is, and most people are happily in the middle, or some combination of the two major party ideas, and people don't feel represented or like the third party will never win anyway, so there isn't any point." Then we have Brody, which has a bioecological approach, which I think explains better the identity. So feel free to see that image out there. Vermin Supreme. I'm imagining there is something on the picture. I haven't been able to see it. That's a comment that Jennifer mentioned. Happy birthday, funny. A birthday party. Okay, sorry, I read that wrongly. I guess it's also about the picture. Sorry, I'm missing the fun. Oh my god.
Just
So
just a quick note. Just a quick note. We are at time. I believe it's 4:31, and we have two, if not three, people waiting in line.
okay, I'm okay. So is there any important comment that I missed? Like I shouldn't skip? Um, I know Rod is talking about Darwinism. Then Jennifer, we make their freedom. We should tag the line for a party. We make the freedom. Okay, so Rod is next, and Jennifer voted against her people.
All right. So I just wanted to ask a question on how does everybody know what groupthink is? The theory of group thinking. Okay,
I can do
so
any friends.
Okay, so one of the things that I always wanted to know, which is going through some other nations that we've talked about today is that how does how can groupthink influence one's political identity? And I would first ask Professor Mansi for his thoughts on how groupthink could potentially influence one's choice for political identification.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
second meeting in a row, I'm gonna get up to use the restroom. Um, yeah, no, that's a fair question. Again, it goes back to the deeper question. I guess how much would you value the political identity that you're I guess selecting from? If you don't really value it, you could say maybe you're more susceptible to groupthink because you don't really care one way or the other. You feel like you have to choose, and that's what it is. If you have a vested interest in the politics, be it local or national, or anything in between, I suppose, then you might be more inclined to develop your own opinion and challenge the groupthink because you're not so much concerned with creating a new identity for yourself or promoting an identity. You're actually concerned with the issues, and it's so I think it would go back and forth. And when I say back and forth, I mean, you might value politics in certain parts of your life, and then in other parts of your life. And when I say parts, I don't mean different sides of you. I mean different times in your life. That's a better way to put it. So there might be times in your life where you are very, very interested in politics, and times in your life where you don't value it as much. And I think that might sway you one way or the other in terms of how influential groupthink is for you, if that makes sense. And I also want to say to Daniel, Daniel, I totally can relate to your story. I interned for a political campaign party my senior year of high school, and yeah, this was 2002, and that is also what I heard. So yeah, there's something to that. I can relate. But yeah, no, great question, Rory.
Great questions, yes. And by the way, Jennifer, based on your comment, that is true. There was one guy who was dead by the time of the race that won his race, but he was dead, so he cannot actually run the position. With that being said, Vivian is next.
Hello. So I just like wanted to like start off with I just wanted to start off with like the ideology that like political like when it comes to politics, everything's a theory. You know, when it comes to communism, socialism, democracy, everything is a theory. And so when you try to apply these different theories into a group of people, not everything's gonna work out fine. Like not everything's gonna go as planned. You know, if you do an experiment just regularly, like not everything goes as you plan. So I think that's like something that we have to like take in consideration when we talk about politics. It's all just a big theory. It's all just different people having different ideologies. I mean, like if we go back and we study like the origins of politics, everyone has their like the father of their politics. Like, you know, you have Marxists and you have all these different type of things. And also another like point that I wanted to bring up is like politics differ from when it comes to like country to country. You know, I have parents who are from Honduras, and so their take on politics is way different from my take to politics. You know, like in their country, politics is not something that's like democracy as much as it's here in the United States. So I honestly think that it honestly just depends where you're from and how you are taught about politics. If you're taught that only a certain amount of people can, if you're taught that politics is only for the wealthy, then that's what that's what you're gonna think politics is about. Like you're gonna think that you're not qualified enough to talk about politics. So that's just something I wanted to like add to that. And also like in the United States, we have the Democratic and the Republican Party. And the reason why is because if we had too many like smaller parties, people wouldn't, there would be too many different ideologies. Like and the thing about politics is you have to sacrifice what you want in a politician. I was watching a video and there's a really popular congresswoman within like the Generation C, called AOC. And AOC is very popular. She's very radicalized. And he was talking about how she sometimes, if she wants to get a bill passed, she'll will have to vote for something that she doesn't approve with. So politics is not really like black and white. It's a lot of it is very gray. And when you have to pick something, you have to make sacrifices when picking that. So I think that it's just very hard to try to condense it down to a simple idea.
And I think that applies to political identity.
Exactly, as well. Yeah.
So you can have conservative positions on certain issues and more liberal positions on other issues.
Exactly.
And there's no one party, I think, for a lot of people that gets everything right. And so you kind of have to make compromises, and it forces you on some level, if you care enough to vote, it forces you to be like, well, which issues do mean more to me?
And that's something that we saw. That's something that we saw a lot in this election. A lot of people who were typically associated with the Republican Party were like, I don't endorse this candidate, so I'm gonna vote Democratic. And that was something that we saw a lot in this election, because a lot of people, they make sacrifices. A lot of the times, it depends on who you are as a person. A lot of people do just do it based on party, and other people do it based on what they do think is more morality correct, like their morals, basically. Yeah.
All right, just before, I know we're over time here, I just want to quickly plug while we still got people, because again, if you got to leave, that's totally understandable. Again, check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we are on Twitter. We post weekly, especially promoting events that are upcoming. And just to remind you all, again, we have an event tomorrow. It's a film that we're going to screen. Be here at 4 o'clock. We start screening at 4:30. It's a collaboration with the International Film Series of Dallas College. It's about political identity from the perspective of, again, a poet. So how do the artists relate to political identity or politics in general? It's going to be a really interesting film, and of course, a great conversation afterwards. We can develop some of the points being made here, maybe flesh them out a bit more fully. And then, of course, we have the big conference coming up the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Again, if you're my student, hopefully if you're a student with anybody, any philosophy professor on this in Dallas College, you've already seen the CFS, the call for submissions to apply. It's a very simple application process. And if you're my students, there's a very large incentive to apply. And then if you of course then get selected, you get that incentive. Okay, so I took
that. Yes, I took that when I took your class, Manzi. I took that incentive.
You did. I'm glad you did. Is there anybody else in the queue?
I think
Yes.
Rody is. But before
Rory,
Rody, they were
Orlando, and then
talking
me.
about. There were people talking about like how people just vote for the party straight out without seeing the person. But Rody's next. Yeah.
All right. So, Orlando, I think she's still here. I think she's just muted. But
You went.
what I was going to say is that going back to um um what we were talking about earlier, on how, with, like, I think Vivian was saying about the different theories of politics and how we try to apply something that's theoretical, right? It's not based in practice. um i I think one of the important things that we have to remember is that um that we have to keep in mind that when we apply something that is abstract to something that's real, it's not going to be cut and dry pretty. And I think that's what Vivian was explaining. And so, in my perspective as a parliamentarian, which I explained what that is in the chat, one of the things that we have to do is that we have to defend the rights of the minority in an assembly. So basically, politics is just basically, in a practical form, a big assembly of people and in different factions. And to wrap this up with what in my essay as an election judge, um, politics and identity go hand in hand, because by being able to represent, to be a part of a group of people that are like you're really just representing yourself and protecting the rights of yourself as an individual. So that's pretty much what I gotta have to say on that. So yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. Orlando is next.
Hey guys, hello. But yeah, I kind of agree with what you were saying, Rory, and I think we all have like our ideologies and our theories and our concepts and what we want out of politics. I think a very easy answer to the question, why does it matter to us, is like I feel like we all have this innate sense in ourselves. It's like, well, what can I do for the world? How can I make it a better place? And essentially, politics just seems to be like the very easy answer of, oh, if I vote for this person, maybe things will be for the better. Maybe I can just from the flick of me signing this or me voting, everything will change and the world will be a better place. And I think that's why we feel like it matters to us in that sense. And it becomes a part of our ideology. And so we see a side as good and we see a side as bad. And so when someone else disagrees, we essentially just hate them automatically. And so that's where you seem to get that turmoil. But I seem to have a little bit more of a pessimistic look on things because I kind of wonder then, is it really beneficial to know all about these ideologies? Like, is it really a good thing that I know so much about libertarianism and all this and that, when at the end of the day, my political ideologies don't get selected? When at the end of the day, my best choice is Joe Biden, Democratic Party, who's not a progressive at all? Does it really matter then? I feel like this goes back to this idea of ignorance is bliss, where essentially it's maybe the less you know about these things, maybe the better. Because then if you know a little bit less, maybe your vote, you feel like it actually counts and you feel like you're actually doing some good. And in some sense, it kind of is that. And this political system seems to be a little bit circular in a sense where we're just choosing people based off what we think is true, because they have so much influence over the media. They can paint pictures that essentially is just told to us, maybe complete lies, so on and so forth. So it's like if we really want real change, the thought of it is like you kind of have to start a political movement. You have to go and you have to start not a revolution, but maybe an evolution. And sometimes that thought seems impossible. But
No, I mean, what I'm saying is this: like, ignorance is a bliss. I don't know.
no,
What
not
I'm gonna
blessed.
say is
Bliss.
this: bliss.
Bliss is
Yes,
not
sorry.
the same thing
My
as
my,
blessed.
my accent play against my success most of the time. What I'm gonna say is this. I think that idea, most people may have it. For example, here in Texas, though, who are more libertarian, they usually feel like they vote really doesn't matter because it always goes to the opposing party. But a way to kind of like it is not for like one day to another. But if you start creating more consciousness and you start like getting actually people who are caring for that point of view, and then you have to have other Orlandos. So it's kind of like, you know what, like I would like to see somebody else. Like if there is more conscience in that regard oriented to that area, you can see a shift. So it does matter because let's say that you are like convinced enough that you can make some change in there and you start like talking to other people why they should care. Maybe eventually enough people will believe it and enough people will push for a politic view where you have to see actual politicians with ideas instead of just the bland red or blue.
So
So
I agree with that, but like I kind of have started to look into the political system in a sense where it's just this whole like I guess House of Cards, the show or whatever, where basically everyone is connected and like the people who have been there so long in terms of the political environment and who run things are the people who know the most about it, have the most experience. So let me give you an example. Like you'll have some people that like Joe Biden, he's been there like 40 years, something like that. So the people that he's going to put in his cabinet are not going to be people he just decides to come up out of nowhere. No, it's going to be people who are already in that environment. So essentially what you have is you have a group of people who with centered focus of power essentially, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to shift this power away when in reality they've had it all along. And
yeah.
so it seems that like you can say, oh well, I can start a grassroots movement. Let me give you an example. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, one of the first ever in history to have 1 million individual donors. If that's not grassroots, I don't know what grassroots is. Yet he was demolished. He was. Why? Because the
But
mechanical system of the political system essentially said no, we're not letting you come in. And
well,
now
we're not gonna
Biden's
say
saying
demolish.
you're not gonna be in our cabinet, and that's that.
Yeah, but the point is this: eventually, all those people who are here are not going to be there. So there's going to be a shift. We just don't know how it's going to happen. But I do know that Yusha is next. I do want to like have enough audience to speak, so then we can vote on the next topic. And yeah,
Thank you. I mean, it's a great discussion. I Yes, Orlando. Coming back to what you were just right now talking about, if you look at how people's political identity goes here, especially, we have a very democratic system, like not the Democratic Party, just the political system, which is a democratic system. But in from the US point of view, China seems like a very what is it? What is it called? Where it has only one ruler. I forgot.
I wouldn't say dictatorship, kind of. I
Yes.
want to say aristocratic. You don't think it's like
Yes.
aristocratic?
That's what I see. Hey, Marcelo is looking for you. From the U.S. point, I'm sorry, that was my co-worker. From the U.S. point of view, the China looks like a very harsh dictatorship. But if you look at their own problems, where in early late 1700s, where the Westerners were bringing in so much opium, and to those who don't know, it's a form of drug. It's a very addictive drug. We call it the Opium War. The president then, I think his name was Xi Jinping. I could be getting that wrong. Please don't quote me on that. But he is the one who brought them out of that, and people saw him as their ideal. They saw him that, oh, he brought us out of this great addiction that we didn't have any money. All of our country's goods were being used by other countries, and this man built China for China by Chinese. So that does sound familiar to what we have in the US. And that's the ideology that they have, and that's why they keep re-electing him, or persons who share his ideology. That, okay, the Westerners, they brought in so much drugs that we ourselves lost our sight, and we call them the sleeping giants because it's a huge country if you look at it. From, I think, 20 years ago, where a yearly income for an average Chinese family was $500 a year. Right now, it's almost $4,800 per year. In 20 years, see how much of a leap that is. Because from their perspective, that ideology works best for them, that hey, we need to have a strong person, and how he brought them out of the Opium War. For those who don't know, President Jinping, he said he basically initiated an order of kelat site for those who were using narcotics, any type of narcotics. And since then, the majority of Chinese population has refrained themselves from even coming close to it, because of the fact that it was for their own good, but it had a very negative repercussion when it comes to the international relations and how other people see it. But if you look at it, it was just that iron fist that people needed to come out of that kind of shell shock, or kind of that their own bubble that people were saying hi all the time. There was no industry, there was no manufacturing, there was nothing. The country was going downhill. But now, if you look at it, it's one of the most contributing countries in the world, where if majority of the countries on planet Earth stop their imports or stop trading with China, China would still be running ahead of the game. They would still be self-sufficient. That's how good they've become. So depending on the people, majority, their ideology reflects in that. I mean, if you look at it during Trump's presidency, we don't look at the good stuff that he did. He did open up more jobs. He did bring back a lot of the soldiers that Obama was hesitant to bring back. He did do a lot of that good stuff that no one wants to talk about. Why? Because the bad stuff is the juicy stuff. That's what everyone wants.
Well, I have
And
to
that
disagree.
represents and reflects. No, I'm not in favor or
No,
against
I mean
anyone.
like as in like your whole assessment. I'm sorry, because you said a lot of good things though. Like think you said a lot of good things, because I mean in terms of like it's like a utilitarian approach where essentially is this better for the country? But then you have to ask yourself, well, will we lose our humanity? Because when you look at China, yes, you're right. They have essentially advanced, in manufacturing and so on and so forth. But how many stories of like slave labor do you hear in China? Also, how many awful stories do you hear about the labor quality in China, where essentially people are working in factories, almost literally living in factories, getting paid almost next to nothing? And then you hear all these different kinds of just deregulations, essentially, where basically people who have the money essentially are the ones who are benefiting the most. When you have things like that, when you want to go outside and protest, and then your government essentially uses violence against you and gives you no freedom of speech, then is that really better for everybody in the country, or does it just seem like it is on a shiny platter? And I think you're right though, because but like in terms of like a utilitarian approach, maybe it is better off for the country, but it comes at the cost of some of the people there. I don't know
But
if that's maybe the best approach.
Aren't they the, like
to that I
also
will say, is there anyone after me? I'm sorry.
Well,
no?
let's pick the topic, guys. This is a great
Yeah,
conversation.
let's pick the topic and then we can come back to
Yeah.
we
Well,
can
Oh,
come back
oh,
to it.
already, but we are only 30 minutes after. Like, come on, we can do better than that. We have
Okay,
more energy.
we're at 53. We're at 53 right now. I'll try
Yeah,
finish. I'll try to
Fine.
finish up by 5,
just,
and then
just
we can
hold the
vote on
thought.
it.
Just hold the thought. Just hold the thought, and let's vote on
Now,
it,
guys,
and then we can have part two of the conversation. That was the other email that it wasn't sent out. It was like another 2 hours of political ideology. That's all there is. So okay.
let's vote.
Let's
Let's
vote.
vote.
Let's vote. Let's vote. Let's vote.
All
Let's
right,
vote.
Okay, so does anyone has already a topic to speak about? Which also reminds me that this is supposed also to be the theme for the next month, because it's the fourth one.
I I had mentioned one, but I don't know if it's going to segue into something new or something old.
Right? Try us.
So I had suggested about how does identity interact with self-actualization, and it sort of came into play when Orlando was talking. Well, sort of like the dichotomy between what Orlando's viewpoint is versus Yusha's viewpoint.
Okay,
So
so yeah, sexualization. I like
So we're putting them to like separate, so it's becoming a debate now. Who is right, who is wrong? I like that. I like that. Yeah.
We have a separate channel for debates.
I was gonna
Yeah.
I was gonna say like a similar topic as freedom versus peace. Should peace come at the cost of freedom?
Okay.
Mine is this. you know, it's political, but not so much. Recently, more states are legalizing recreational drugs. How do we feel about that? So maybe drugs or chemical
That could
use.
be a good thing.
How that relates to freedom, or kind of back to maybe stuff that Yusha was saying earlier. Maybe that's not necessarily a good thing. So yes, something like that we can consider.
Can I suggest something?
What'd you
Since
say?
we already have three. Can I suggest something since we already have three topics between you, Orlando, and Rory?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
I would suggest is that I guess I'll just put it this way: does freedom come with an asterisk? Like you are free to do this. Like we live in a society, right? We are free to do what we want, but in certain limitations. Like you cannot rob a bank, you cannot go kill someone. Bye. Thank you for coming. So that would be it. My kind of pitch to it. Does freedom come with an asterisk? Because you're more than free to go live in wilderness, but still you're limited that, hey, you cannot cut this many trees, you cannot kill these endangered animals, you cannot come down and wreak havoc on the village that you're living next to.
That's kind of what I want to talk about, like freedom versus like freedom and its limit.
Yeah.
It's like, at what point should we limit freedom? Like, you know, of course freedom is important, but like, you know, to what extent should you be free to go and kill an animal that is extinct, so on and so forth, things like that, you know.
Or if it is extinct, then you're not really killing.
When that's extinct, endangered.
On the verge of
Yeah,
extinction.
the fact, yeah, the
Wow,
fact
wow,
yeah.
that was quite
Like
a
the
shot.
fact
And
that everybody said,
you're being-
yeah, that makes sense.
you
I'm not alone
resuscitate
on that.
somebody who's already dead. You kill it again. That's
said,
nasty.
like,
I feel like that would be Jurassic Park all over again.
I said extinct, and then some people were like, so, hey, I'm taking the fall.
Okay, did someone tap them up, or do you guys want me to do it?
I think
I
we're
already did it. I'm
Appreciate
just
it.
waiting to see if there is any other one, but I have three. No more, no less. Okay.
We have four, right?
That's
Yeah, you have four.
That's
okay.
wait,
Or we
that's
can,
Oh,
or we can
sorry. I
or we
didn't
can put it as
because
no.
This was the same basically.
We
We could
can
change.
We can
could
put it
change-
as
We could change the freedom one and just call it whatever. Well, I don't know how we can really put it into words, but
Okay, so how could you phrase it?
It's not the drug should be free. Like they shouldn't be charged like a price. It's more like, what is this suggesting? Is this supposed to be a celebration of our freedom now that you know certain class narcotics?
you got to remember, drugs are already legal. What do you think pharmaceutical companies sell?
yes.
Like it's drugs.
But
It's
I
just-
think even more like weed
no,
or
well,
like
let
psychedelics
me-
or stuff like that. Like, right?
Let me refine what I'm saying. So like when it comes to narcotics and then like, you know, LSD and then weed, those are unregulated drugs. If they're made legal and then they're regulated and you have microdosing, you can actually find benefits in them. And so maybe it's actually less harmful than pharmaceutical drugs that have nasty side effects that can literally give you heart attacks and kill you.
Well, yeah, they're going to be regulated if we sell them in stores and charge money for them. That's how you regulate,
Yeah. Also tax money. You can make a lot of tax money from it.
perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
right.
it said-
Like we do on cigarettes and tobacco products.
And also it could eliminate criminal activity associated with those illegal drugs that are being sold.
Yep.
I mean, not
that's-
necessarily, because there is always a new drug on the market.
Sure, but it'll
as-
do.
But it will be a
as
different
medicine and
target.
chemical, as medicine and chemical practices grow more advanced, of course there's going to be something new at some point.
Let's talk about an example though. Let's think about maybe what was it called where they made alcohol illegal. What was it called again? The prohibition. Yeah. So basically what happened when they did that, essentially everybody wanted it, and essentially bootleggers started becoming like, you know, super rich. And so and then the mafia basically spawned from that. But now that essentially it's legalized again, you don't really see the prominence of the mafia that you once did. I'm sure they still exist, but not to the extent that they did back then. And so what was that? Because an entire prohibition essentially came from that. You could kind of see a similarity within essential illegal drugs, where basically that entire market, Are you sure? I agree with what
I
you're
don't.
saying.
I don't
because
agree to that. I don't agree to that. You know why? Because different narcotics have different effects on you. Like LSD is different from cocaine. Cocaine is different from mushrooms. So
just
it's
one
Save it,
thing.
all.
save it for the meeting.
Just
Save
one
it for the
thing.
meeting.
Just one thing. Just one thing.
I mean, your topic is not
It's still
winning, so we
missing.
have
It's
to.
still.
That's a good
Yeah, wait.
topic, though. It's a good topic.
It's still. Dwala is still for voting. Also, Jennifer. I'm not gonna try the last name, or maybe I should. Niem is also there. Mansim is missing also to vote, and myself. But myself, I'm just like saving it
It's
for
all
like
right.
if I
Just
need to
like in-
skew the
just
thing.
like in-
I skew like you
Like
thought
in
you're
the
gonna win.
US, your vote
I
does not
tag
count.
Ballpoint.
Yeah, the vote map.
We need to keep in mind that
That
Manzi
is
suggested a topic, and as per
right.
tradition, we do not want to pick it.
That's
So
correct.
it's
That is-
We
six.
cannot
Actually,
pick it.
that's
well, I think two already won because it has 6 votes and we're 12 right now. So one and three already has some votes, so there is no position for tie.
it's no
So
mathematical possibility.
there is
But yeah,
it is
No,
the
I'm gonna hit y'all with the
projected
Trump. I'm gonna hit
winning
y'all
of
with the Trump.
this
That's fake
election.
votes, y'all. Fake
Yeah.
votes. I want to count the legal votes, not the fake votes.
Yeah, but it is projected that 2 won. So two is actual. And two is the winner.
hey guys, just to make something clear, Rory said, just to let you know, if substance use is ever talked about, I cannot be on the call. So if we do pick
Yeah,
that
no, but
topic or talk about that, we
it
just
is
need
not gonna be
to
the
inform him
topic.
beforehand.
It is
Yeah,
not the topic.
just
I
for
like
future
this.
reference,
Yeah,
if
I'm
we ever evolve into it, because after the next week's meeting, of course, Manzi's going to suggest it again and again and again until we until we pick it.
until we
But
yeah.
just so everyone knows, especially the officers and the advisor, because it's our duty to keep in mind about the sensitivities of our participants.
Absolutely.
Yes.
To second
I'm
that,
aware of it.
if I don't want our topics to be limited, so if there's a topic you're not comfortable with, yeah, you don't, you're free to excuse yourself from that meeting.
Yes.
That's a good topic, though. I really do like that one.
Yeah. I just want to point out something out. We're not mean toward Professor Mancy. We're just making him human.
It's tough
Yes.
love. That's what that is.
Yeah, if anything, he needs some
Yeah.
toughness. So we're just gonna like beat that toughness out of him.
You know,
No.
it's like
No.
spring steel.
No,
No.
It's like
they're bullying me.
see, no. Dealing with Professor Manzi is like dealing with spring steel. If it's cold and tough, you cannot bend it to how it needs to be. But if you heat it up at the right temperature and if you hit it enough times,
Yeah. She's quite bent.
That was a good analogy.
it's quite malleable at that point.
All right, so we're
All
good.
right, so freedom and
Topic two
peace
for
and
next week.
whatever is it that was the other thing is the
We
topic
might
for
have to
next
rename
week.
it. We might have to rename it.
We have to
Freedom
rename it, but let's do it
Freedom with
now.
an asterisk.
Let's do
I
it
guess
now
we can call it
because then we
Freedom in
forget
fine
that
print.
I have
Freedom
to
and
write that down. Freedom and its restrictions.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, actually,
Freedom
that
and
might,
bounds. The limitations of freedom.
Yeah,
Limita-
limitations of freedom. I think that's a good way to put it.
yeah.
You got it. You got it. Oh, that was funny.
Thanks for coming.
We have. Could I have a link to the submission of the philosophy conference? Catherine Rebecca is asking Professor Manzi, I believe.
Do we have it yet?
It's been sent out, I believe, to the philosophy departments of all campuses.
No, the answer is yes. I believe she's a student of mine. Yeah, it'll be in the eCampus. eCampus was down when we started. I don't know if it's up again or not. But yeah, you can look at it under the. You know what? I'll send an announcement to all the classes rather than just kind of posting it and mentioning it here and there. So I'll send an announcement class-wide. You'll be able to, and I'll flesh out the process of application. It's very simple, very straightforward. You don't have to have anything finished to apply. You could say, I'm working on this. If I finish it, would you accept it? And that's perfectly appropriate. But I know all my students have at least one essay, for the most part, in the books. So they got something there. And it's going to be a pretty good incentive. So keep
Hey
that in
man,
mind.
remember where you were trying to strong arm us into doing one?
Of course, it doesn't ring a bell to him.
Oh, scholar.
I think a certain fellow officers should do it.
Well, the philosophy club meeting is going to be part of the conference. That's how we're going to end the conference.
That's our
That's
that'll
awesome.
be our part of it. Even though I don't think any of us are in your class, but I'm not in your class anymore, so.
Professor Manzi, as much as it pains me to say it, can we do your suggested topic the week after?
This is
like
a
it.
mod-
I do want to.
I see what you're
prove
doing. You're
Orlando
building
wrong.
expectation, you're creating
No,
hope, and then we
relax,
crush it,
Peter,
and it's
relax.
more satisfying. I see.
Say
I
he's
see.
trying to
Yeah,
prove
sure.
you
Ask him. Ask him. Yeah, next week.
Because I do want to prove Orlando wrong that
Look at
regulating drugs is not the same as the prohibition or even regulating alcohol.
Well, look, I didn't say it was the same. I said we could see
This is the
similar
issue, guys.
benefits from
This
prohibition.
is the issue.
But
This
okay,
is the issue.
Alright, like
This
that.
is
We're gonna
not
get
the debate club, so we can create an actual meeting to debate this
No,
topic
no,
that is
yeah.
not in the actual meeting, because the
Exactly.
meeting is just for us to explore the ideas. But if you want to see who is right and who is wrong, we can just create a
Alright.
different event to debate on
Let's
it.
start recruiting for that. How about that? Let's start doing that.
No, that should be a conference presentation. You guys can have a little debate on this.
No.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm good.
he
Orlando, are you
wants
down
to
for it?
build up
Orlando, are
a
you down for it?
conference.
Orlando,
Uh,
you're down
oh,
for it?
oh, oh,
Right.
oh,
You're down for it?
Drugs? You want to do it on drugs?
Sure. For the
Alright.
conference though.
I'll do it. 23rd. Dang, I have to prepare.
So are you
Bruh.
both
Bruh.
gonna present together? That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I guess that's
So-
basically what we're gonna do.
All right, and who gets to say
For you
who's right?
guys, if you look into impromptu speeches, get an outline of an impromptu speech, that'll help you out.
Okay. That'd be probably
I'm well versed with that, Rory. Thanks for bringing that back up.
Yeah. You're talking
Let me
to
know
people who
let
like
me
to
know
do
who
that
wins
stuff.
though, because I want to know who wins. I just can't. It's just I can't be a part of that topic. That's just too much for me.
I
We
understand.
We appreciate it, Rory.
Fernando will come like,
Ferdinando, you're not gonna do anything. You're gonna
What?
just sit down.
Ooh,
Sit down for what?
Oh.
Oh, but jokes on you. I'm already sitting.
Well, you can sit on the ground now.
No, it's too far off. It's
You
too
mean Ferdinando? You may be a little bit older than me, but I still got higher rank in some places.
What?
in what
Shots fired.
in what places? Because if it is fighting, you are not.
No.
Guys.
That'll do it,
In-
folks. Thanks for coming tonight.
All right. Now
Bye,
in
you
all
guys.
seriousness, in all seriousness, all jokes aside, thank you guys so much for joining us today yet for another weekly meeting of Philosophy Club. That's with a PH. And for the film series tomorrow, which is again with a PH. We will all see you next week, hopefully, just to bring it back to everyone's attention. Tomorrow, next week's topic is limitations of freedom. We do have the fall conference coming up, so if you need more information, please feel free to reach out to either Professor Manzi or your philosophy professor or department director. They will guide you in the right direction. Or if you have any questions for the officers, Orlando, me, Professor Manzi, and Ferdinando, the five of us, are all available. You can reach out to us at any given time. Yes, all four of us. I'm sorry. I was thinking
Don't
of
worry.
Marcus
I'm
too.
here to correct him. Like, yeah, I'm just testing my camera. That's what I'm doing. It was a little bit.
Yeah. It seems pretty clear.
Yes,
it seems pretty clear.
thank you.
But
Thanks
the
for coming.
meeting.
Okay,
The meeting
thank you
is
so much for
concluded.
everyone.
Bye, you guys.
Until
Bye.
tomorrow.
If you'd like to roast, if you'd like to
four.
watch me roast Orlando, please feel free to stick around. But
Roast?
yeah, we're just gonna
All right. We'll see.
we're just gonna take a couple more minutes to put the final nail in the coffin.
All right, go
and-
ahead. You're gonna. Can I write a eulogy? I mean, can you write the eulogy?
Yes, please. And we might send some Irish. We might send some Irishmen to your funeral.
Well, hey, I mean, I am half Irish.
She is half Irish.
There you
so
go.
We already have it here.
I'll just wear my mask.
No, jeez.
Yes, please.
Don't worry.
Wear the
All
mask.
right,
the nose. That's
But
like-
Orlando, what aside from the other topic for the week after, I did wanted to talk about, because I knew it was going to come up when I was going to bring up China's economy, that factories and low-income workers. But if you look at it,
Wait. Before you continue, should we record?
No,
No, we don't need to.
Okay. So let
no,
me
since the
stop.
meeting is over, we're good.
I have to meet with the
Uh,
student.